To be free, not to have to go. Poof! What do you need? Poof! What do you need? Poof! What do you need? To be my own master. Such a thing would be greater than all the magic, all the treasure in the world.
I left school and couldn't find acting work, so I started going to clubs where you could do stand-up. I've always improvised, and stand-up was this great release. All of a sudden, it was just me and the audience.
Hi, this is Arlene.
This is Gowri.
And of course, you are listening to Durian ASEAN. Just now, we had two of us quoted excerptions from famous movies that were acted by the late Robin Williams.
It's such a great loss for the entertainment industry, for the film industry, and also for the 90s kids, especially a lot of his movies, Mrs. Doubtfire, especially my personal favorite one will be Flubber. When I was a kid, I used to love that movie, and I used to watch all his stand-ups as well. And of course, my favorite movie of all time is Dead Poets Society, which I like to tell people that it sums up my life. And it is a major, major loss. And I was overwhelmed when I heard the news yesterday. He is truly one of the greatest actors and greatest comedian out there.
Of course, he also acted in other movies. Of course, and my favorite of all time, I love cartoons. The quote that I quoted earlier was actually from Aladdin, the movie Aladdin. I think what I really admire about Robin Williams, he is a versatile actor, and he's also a very kind person, and you can see it throughout the characters that he portrayed. He can be funny. Of course, he's a person that is famous as being a funny man, but he can also be someone who is serious, wise, someone who impart meaningful words to the audience.
And this other quote that I really like from him, which says that you're only given one little spark of madness, and you must not lose it. And it's very simple and it's very deep at the same time. He's telling everyone that we're all special in our own ways. We are all given this one little quirk that we have, and a lot of people try to change themselves, try to be someone they're not. And I think this quote is a great way to remind yourself that no matter how weird or how crazy you are you, and you have that special thing that no one else have. So don't ever try to change yourself, and don't lose that spark of madness that is so unique about you.
Of course, I think of course, his best acting, which he won an Academy Award, was Good Will Hunting. And my favorite line is, "You don't know about real loss because it only occurs when you've loved something more than you love yourself. I doubt you've ever dared to love anybody that much."
Yeah, and a lot of people also, a lot of our local celebrities and politicians also voiced their concern on Twitter yesterday, and it was all over Facebook. Everyone was incredulous. They just couldn't believe that he passed away, and the news came as a shock. It was reported in the morning that apparently he committed suicide, and a lot of people were hoping that it would be a rumor or something that's made up, but sadly it is true, we have lost someone great.
And he was only 63 years old, American star, and he has been unfortunately battling depression. I read an article yesterday said that usually people who are the funniest or who are the class clown, as they mentioned, are those that would hide their depression. And you never know, like the next day, probably your friend or people that you love would just, commit suicide or do something horribly wrong just because, they face depression and they do not know how to handle it.
I wouldn't completely agree with that article, but I do think that it makes sense. I have read a lot of other comedians who say that they use their jokes as a way to get away from their past, from their troubled childhood, from the depression that they're facing.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think the idea is to face their depression rather than get away with it. And I think a lot of comedians, it's hard for them to face it when, you know, the lives that they live is people are expecting them, you know, to always be cheerful all the time. So anyway, to start our news for today, on ASEAN News, is about our local squabble in the Selangor Menteri Besar crisis.
So there were termination letters that were issued after the Menteri Besar gets consent from the Sultan.
A few Pakatan and DAP reps were terminated by Tan Sri Khalid Ibrahim yesterday.
And these termination letters were issued as soon as he obtained consent from Sultan Shafaruddin Idris Shah to first remove 2 PKR and 3 DAP representatives in the State Exco lineup. And Khalid wrote to the Selangor Palace after the State Exco members from PKR and DAP jointly issued a statement yesterday that they regarded the Menteri Besar as holding this post merely in a transitional capacity before the new Menteri Besar is named to take his place.
They said that they respected the decision by the Sultan of Selangor to allow Khalid to continue as Menteri Besar until November. But he and the State Exco cannot make any decision without a proper voting process. Through my conversations with a few of my friends, I think a lot of people are rather jaded with whatever that is happening in Selangor right now.
Yes, a lot of people on Facebook have also been voicing their discontentment about this issue, and a lot of them think that these people are being very insensitive towards the rakyat because they are just having their own games here. They are kind of like playing chess. One makes the move and then the other one is planning and making the next move, and it's all about their game up there, and they're not considering the people in this context.
Last week during the weekends, I was actually playing Politico. It's a political game cards that you play with your peers.
There's a political game card.
Yeah, I should play it with you.
Okay.
So interestingly, it really show us, you know, like us, the voters are just mere numbers to political parties. I mean, of course, it's just a game, but it somehow showed the real politics, you know, the invisible real politics behind the Malaysian politics itself. And what I witnessed was during playing with the game Politico, you can easily be friends with your enemy or be enemies with your friends, as long as you, at the end of the day, you know, you benefited from the coalition, as in like winning the general election and also gaining entrance to Putrajaya. And in the case of a Selangor Menteri Besar squabble, obviously is about allegiance, and all the 6 representatives that were terminated by Khalid Ibrahim was Elizabeth Wong from Bukit Lanjang, Dr. Doraya Alwi from Semena. Both are from PKR. For the DAP representative, they are Datuk Teng Cham Kien from Sungai Pinang, V. Ganapati Rao from Kota Alam Shah, and Yew Yong Hian Wah from Sri Kembangan.
And Khalid also earlier indicated that the State Executive Council could still run the government because he had a quorum of 5, including himself and the 4 past Exco members. And he said that according to the Article 53(2)(b) of the State Constitution, the Executive Council could have between a minimum of 4 and up to a maximum of 10 members. So he's now operating on 5.
Another conversation that I heard was about gaining consent with the Sultan. I think in Malaysia, Sultan play a huge role in terms of deciding who should be the leader in any of the political political decision in choosing either Menteri Besar or even getting consent by the federal government.
Well, I'm from Penang, so I obviously do not know how probably, like, we don't have a sultan there, and he doesn't really play an important role. So, but I guess it is different in the case of Selangor because the MB is technically under the Sultan, and that's why as all the squabble was happening, and they were saying that we should take this back to the Sultan because ultimately he's in charge.
It was a similar pattern back in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, during the Perak fiasco, where the change of Menteri Besar from the past, I think he was Nizar. He was being forced to step down, and a new Menteri Besar from the Barisan Nasional was being elected, or was being chosen, appointed by the Sultan of Perak, and the whole thing was I would say a hot mess. I don't know in the case of Selangor it would be a positive connotation or not, but what I witnessed is we see similar patterns happening in Selangor right now.
And I guess we have to wait and see what happens next, and what is their new move on this matter.
But you know what? One thing I want to highlight is the only representative that were being terminated were PKR and the AP representative, while the past representative, interestingly, they are allowed to stay. And the four of them were Iskandar Samad from Cempaka, Salihan Muski from Sabah, Dr. Halimah Ali from Selat Klang, and Dr. Ahmad Yunus Hairi from Sijangkang. So there's a lot of interesting development happening right now, and a lot of political allegiance being changed. I'm not sure whether PAS would choose to opt out from Pakatan, but it seems like they are really in a situation where they are indecisive.
But they are opening their doors to Khalid Ibrahim when previously when he was allegedly sacked by PKR, and he said, although they were supposed to be under the same entity, but they still told Khalid Ibrahim that you're always welcome to join us if you're.
The thing about Khalid Ibrahim is he is a very capable person. I mean, you can see his track record with Selangor. He has 3 billion reserve in the Selangor coffer, and at the same time, he has no negative. I don't think he has much of negative, I would say, sentiment from the people of Selangor. I think generally, the people of Selangor, whether they are BN supporters or they are Pakatan supporters, they seem to be very much in tune with and also very much liking the Khalid Ibrahim's rule. So for me personally, being a Selangor voter myself, I have no problem with Khalid Ibrahim continue being an MB regardless he's under any political parties at all.
And I think another issue that's also happening in Selangor right now is the water crisis, and apparently we could be heading into another water rationing crisis.
So now you are staying in Selangor. That means you are also facing water crisis as well.
I think I was the one that was the most affected one in the last rationing because staying in UM and honestly, we weren't getting proper notices from the university's side. They don't exactly. They do send us emails sometimes, but there are times when you just wake up and there is just no water and there's nothing that you can do. So, I'm not staying there anymore, but I think water rationing would still be very inconvenient, of course.
Yeah, with the Selangor fiasco right now, the squabbles between different political parties and political entities, I hope that they can put more focus on the water issue. I really hope that, because as what we see in the dam, which supply water to 60 households in Klang Valley, only showed a mere increase to 32.03% of its capacity compared to 31.9% last Friday.
And it's very interesting that they said do not raise your hopes just because it's been raining for the last couple of weeks. It doesn't mean that the water levels are increasing in the dam, but of course people would think that way, that it's been raining and we should be fine. But I guess it also goes down to how they harvest this rainwater.
You know what I find it very appealing to the situation on the water rationing is, I think the Malaysian public has yet to register in their mind that we need to save water, to conserve water. And there's no public service announcement about conserving water other than coming from a few NGOs, environmental NGOs.
Actually, there are a couple on TV, but I guess they have to push it more, because if it's just an advertisement that comes on every now and then, and because a lot of people don't even watch TV these days. I can't even remember when was the last time I saw any TV.
Me too.
And they do have a couple of announcements on probably other radio channels as well.
I think they should put it all out in all channels of communication, including the internet, including in all major newspapers as well, on online news, because I think it is important for people to understand this. This is a reality. We are no longer, under the nanny care of the Selangor Authority.
And the previous water rationing actually started on February 25, and that reportedly affected 6.7 million people.
Wow, that's a lot of number of people. Another concern in another country is about the situation of ISIS, as we discussed yesterday with Dr. Faizal Musa. ISIS, or you call it Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. This is a movement that is spreading all over Middle East, that is trying to create this Islamic State within the region, is now spreading across Indonesia. In the weeks that follow extensive discussion of the impact of ISIS, the Indonesian government decided to officially ban ISIS, and arguing that the militant outfit should not be allowed to spread its teaching in the archipelago.
And the declaration on the ban on ISIS was made in the presence of high-ranking officials from certain ministries and other government security apparatus, including the Religious Affairs, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, the National Intelligence Agency, Human Rights Minister, Indonesian military chief, and also the National Police Chief General Sutarman.
But I still feel that Indonesia is on the right track when it comes to voicing out against Islamist militant or any religious militant that is spreading across our archipelago. While at the same time, I barely hear anything from the Malaysian government on ISIS.
That's right. And also, they are very concerned about Indonesians who are actually going to Syria to join this ISIS movement, because they have been influenced by the ideology, and they think that this is what, technically what my religion and God wants to do, as I reported yesterday actually. And the government is trying to curb this, trying to bring these people back and telling them that no, this is not right, and this is not what we want, and this is not the way that it should be. But I guess sometimes when you just you're just so deep into something that it clouds your judgment, and nothing can change your mind anymore.
And at the same time, I think Indonesia should focus on its ideology, which is Pancasila. As we know, in Malaysia, our ideology is supposed to be the Rukun Negara, or our constitution, but not many people regard that much, put high regards on that. But in Indonesia, Pancasila is a huge thing, and it is what is binding Indonesian people of all races and religion. With more and more young Muslim joining ISIS, I think it will create this militant ideology about Islam, when Islam is actually more diverse than that. And for me personally, I always believe that Islam has never promote the idea of militantism on spreading its ideology or its belief. I think Islam has always been a force that is peaceful, like it has been a very organic religion, as in like you only believe in Islam when you try to understand more about of its teaching, rather than trying to oppress people and impose people, this is the right way, this is the only religion that is being accepted by God. while other religions are considered heresy. I don't believe that is what the teaching ought to be.
But when you spoke to Dr. Faisal Musa yesterday, what did he
Mhm.
say was the end goal of ISIS?
I think the end goal of ISIS is very clear. It's about militarism, and number two, it's about creating an Islamic state. I think it has a strong rooted ideology on the idea of nation state, when in fact the idea of nation state has never been something that existed during the Prophet Muhammad time. Of course, people rule over a town or an empire, but it has never had that kind of nation state ideology where you create this sort of religion as the backbone of the state's rule or state's ideology. I don't think this is what it ought to be.
Especially through genocide, the mass killing of the Christians. That's not. That is probably the most convenient way to go about creating a state, but obviously that violates human rights on so many levels, and that's not how you want to go about creating an Islamic state. And like you said, that's not what Islam is really supposed to be about. And I've heard a lot of other people saying that. So by actually executing it that way, they are in a way probably tarnishing the reputation of Islam around the world.
You are spot on. I think when it comes to ISIS, a lot of people don't understand, like, is this what religion is all about? Militarism and nation state. I think Islam is not about any political entity or political ambition. By separating Islam with any political ambition, then you can see like what Islam is all about organically. On the other hand, we also are witnessing a huge problem between Palestinians and also Israeli. And of course, I'm mentioning about the Gaza war that is still happening right now. As we discussed, I think a few weeks ago, about the boycott by Malaysians and all the protests happening all around the nation regarding on the boycott against McDonald's. What do you think about this?
Well, I obviously disagree with all the boycotting that's happening. I had a few people who come up to me and ask me, so are you boycotting McDonald's? The fact is I boycotted McDonald's a long, long time ago simply because I don't really like fast food. And it's not just McDonald's. I never eat at KFC. I never eat in Burger King.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's
when people come up to me and say these things, I'm like, hey,
it's chemically
I'm way ahead of you.
It's chemically infused burger. I mean, if I want a real burger, I'll make it myself. I will mash the.
Yeah, especially since Jamie Oliver came up with that article and he recreated the McDonald's burger patty, and it's just full of things that are harmful to your body that is not supposed to be consumed.
You are spot on that. And when it comes to the boycott against McDonald's, I'm really impressed with Palestinian. So the Palestinian ambassador said, why don't you just pressure the US not boycotting McDonald's? I'm like, yeah,
exactly.
Of course,
this
exactly.
is what we've been trying to tell everyone. And I'm so glad that someone from Palestine actually said that, as opposed to saying, oh, thank you guys for boycotting McDonald's. They're saying, no, that's not how you do it.
It's funny
it's US that's funding them. And
it's funny that Palestinian ambassador make more sense than the general Malaysian public. I totally agree. I mean, if you want to boycott McDonald's, go ahead, but not because of Israel. I think you should, if you really want to put pressure on Israel, put pressure on its ally, which is the US, obviously. And another story before we wrap up is about the South China Sea.
Yeah, as a parent, I'm really impressed with Joko Widodo, how he is being so proactive in this issue and said, hey, if you guys need a mediator, Indonesia is more than willing to help. We will help you out with this crisis to have a dialogue and all that. And I'm just liking this guy even more every day.
Oh my God, I wish he's the Prime Minister of Malaysia, seriously. One thing I was impressed with Widodo is because he is willing, to settle the dispute. He also understands China will always be this major superpower that we need to sort of understand that it will never back up its militarism towards any entity that is against it. So rather than fight against it or ally ourselves with the US, why don't we settle our squabble with China amicably, having Indonesia as the mediator. And I think Indonesia will be the best mediator is because it's part of ASEAN, number one. Number two is because Indonesia has always have good relationship with China.
That's right. They do not have any disputes with China about the South China Sea, and they are pretty neutral in this matter. So I think that it would be the best for them to act as to be the intermediary in this crisis.
Widodo also said that he would help speed up the drafting of the code of conduct between China and the 10 member states of the ASEAN countries, and I think it would be great for Indonesia to step up its game. And I think in the problem between China and Southeast Asia, we should leave out the US. I personally feel that the US should not be part of either the mediator or putting its hand on the squabbles between Southeast Asia and
like
China.
You said, it should be someone from ASEAN. We have 10 countries here, and definitely I think this can be solved within our own bloc, and we don't need to have help from any other superpower interfering.
Again, I think the one word that we need to remember all the time when it comes to international relations is diplomacy.
Diplomacy, all the way.
Okay, that's all from us.
Before that, let me just give you a little football update from last night. I have to report this because Real Madrid won, and they won 2-0 against Sevilla for the UEFA Super Cup. And Cristiano Ronaldo scored twice, and we have won our first cup this season. So watch out, you guys. That'll be all from me.
Okay, of course, you can always follow us on Facebook and Twitter if you want to know more about us. And don't forget to listen to us live at duranasian.com or listen via your mobile phone by downloading the TuneIn app. And listen to us and share your views with us. If you really, if you really want to know more about ASEAN, do let us know. Suggest to us new ideas and all that. Thank you very much. This is Arlene signing off.
This is Gowri.